my opinion, it's been a really long time since we've had a good MMORPG. And I, like millions of other people, got my start in the genre with World of Warcraft. And that was after being a long-time fan of the Warcraft real-time strategy series. And since then, I've seen the rise and fall of probably a dozen MMOs to include World of Warcraft itself. Now, there were a few times that I got really excited about a new upcoming MMO just to get let down. And for me personally, those were Elder Scrolls Online, New World, and then recently Throne and Liberty. Now, these games did a lot of things right, but for me personally, they did some things so wrong that it turned me off, or like completely ruined the game for most of the fan base. It's been a really long time since I personally have thoroughly enjoyed what I consider a good MMORPG game. And I'm sure a good number of you guys feel that way too. It seems I've seen that sentiment online lately. I'm not here today to discuss the failures of all those games with you guys. If you want to see that content, it is all over this platform. I'm here today instead to cautiously share my optimism about a new game that is in alpha development right now, and in the next 2 weeks you're going to see a good deal of streaming and content for this game, and that's Ashes of Creation by Intrepid Studios. Now, Intrepid Studios is being headed up by a millionaire gamer named Steven Sharif. Okay, Steven has been a longtime fan of the genre and has partially funded this game development himself. His vision for this game, the scope and the scale and the just sheer number of systems that are in this game, at first look, if it's your first look at it, it can be overwhelming and vast. And that's why I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm excited because having all these systems in place gives the game a lot of diversity, a lot of things you can do, many hours of content. But I'm worried about them nailing those systems and making it worth our time. But I think if this alpha test goes well and they get the proper feedback and they put in the hard work and the hours, that they can eventually make this game be what it's envisioned to be. So I figure I'm just gonna cover as much of the game in the next 2 weeks leading up to the alpha test as I can, as I'm actually newer to Ashes of Creation. I haven't dug into as much as some of the other content creators. So this video is more geared towards people who don't know much about it, or if you're like me, you want to get to know more about it. And I'm going to be digging way back, like 7-8 years back into their content, some of their initial posts and videos. I know I'm not going to be able to cover the whole scope of the game in the next 2 weeks, but I'm going to cover as much as I can up until the launch of this next phase of alpha testing. So we're going to get into 2 videos here, and these 2 videos cover the core foundation of this game, which is the node system. And these videos are from 7 years ago. This game's been in development for 8 years. So let's take a look. Alright guys, we're gonna get into these two videos, and I'm gonna share my opinion with you guys. But at the end, I'm gonna ask for your opinion down in the comments section. Please let me know what you think. These are two videos describing the node system in Ashes of Creation.
Hey everyone, my name is Stephen Sharif, and I'm the creative director here at Intrepid Studios. Many of you have seen our MMORPG in development, Ashes of Creation. Well, I'd like to take you through part 1 in a series of videos that will explain probably the most important system in the game, our node system. This system is what enables players to develop the world around them, affecting everything from the story of the world to the content that players experience. All throughout the world in Ashes of Creation exist nodes. These nodes at first exist behind the scenes, unknown to the players as collection points for activities. These nodes are divided into zones of influence, or COIs as we call them, represented here by the different colored areas, and within each zone is a node as shown. A node represents a specific location where a camp can form and gradually be developed into a village, then a town, to a city, and eventually a metropolis. Every activity a player participates in will fall within a specific node's COI, and these activities will contribute to that specific node's development. This is important because only so many nodes can be developed, and certain content is locked behind which nodes develop. This can create conflict between different communities that have a vested interest in the development of certain nodes. When you first enter the world, you will arrive through one of the great divine gateways. These portals are remnants of the civilizations that once inhabited this world. Your ancestors fled their home in the East, and now an eternity has passed, and these divine gateways have opened once again, leading you back to the world of your origin. As our players begin to explore their surroundings, they will find a world teeming with valuable resources, complex quests, and monstrous foes. In this case, one of our players has found some ore to mine, which allows her to progress her artisan class by collecting materials from the world. This other player has begun to harvest wood he needs for building supplies to construct a home on the hillside. As they collect these materials, they are both gaining character experience, while at the same time contributing experience to the node that resides within this specific zone of influence. As players participate in more activities, this node will collect enough experience to advance to the next stage of development. All the activity in this area has brought the base node to stage 1 in its development. We call this the NPC stage. Until now, this node was unknown, but the arrival of these NPCs unlocks access.
Okay, so that's an interesting concept to me, and I've never seen this in a game before. So basically, you start out not knowing where these zones of influence are and nodes. Now, they have kind of indicated where some of them are going to be, but there are no markers when you're in game to say you're in this zone of influence and you're working on this node. So initially, players aren't going to understand directly where all that effort that they're putting in is going to affect the world. And then apparently, if you progress one node and not another, that's going to change the storyline of your specific server, and it's also going to dictate what content is and what content is not available. And you're kind of blind at the start. Now, of course, as we go into this next stage of alpha testing, we're going to figure out some of the zones of influence, but there's only a tiny portion of the map that is available for this next phase of alpha testing. But that's interesting. I haven't seen anything like this in a game before. So, and this is the core design concept behind this game.
To new activities for the players, and as the node continues to progress through each level, it will attract more NPCs, which will provide evolving content that reflects the specific node's location. Let's fast forward to a level 4 node, the town stage. Notice that a new monster is threatening our newly formed town. If this node had not been developed, it may have never revealed itself. The world itself is
Something else obviously worth mentioning. This is not what the game looks like, guys. The footage at the beginning of the video is actual in-game footage. This is just an overview.
reacting to the advancement of specific nodes. This town was advanced near forests and mountains, drawing the attention of the sinister creatures that dwell within. If the town had been formed along the coast, perhaps this fisherman would have caught something more dangerous than the fish you see here. The content that exists in Ashes connects in some way to the location and advancement of the node system. It reaches level 5, becoming a city, and some new events are happening in the world. A bridge has been built to connect this area to a neighboring node. This will add a potential trade route that our caravan system will take advantage of, connecting two neighboring nodes and allowing for economic prosperity for players to capitalize on. However, all of this activity has triggered something deep within the mountain. All of this civilization has awoken an ancient dragon. The higher stage a node advances, the more significant events it draws toward it. Epic world bosses will reflect the development of specific nodes and their location. Our world is designed to react to the players by providing new and exciting chapters to an ever-evolving story. A story that
So here we are 7 years later. They've actually already brought that dragon to life, and he's pretty impressive.
reflects the actions of each server. A story that can change and adapt to provide the players an immersive tale woven by the actions of the community. This dragon is the server's dragon, part of the server's tale, and one which might not be seen on any other server. The players now must react to this evolving threat. Thankfully, these players are up to the task, and taking down this dragon has again contributed to the node, furthering its development. From the first...
So this is early development footage. Obviously the game looks much better than this now.
Stage of a few wandering merchants to the 6th stage of a sprawling metropolis. Nodes redefine the world around them, influencing points of interest in the world, quest lines, story arcs, drop tables and resource pools, even the spawn tables for bosses and NPCs across the world. This cycle of nodes leveling, triggering events, and leveling again is the fundamental cycle of growth throughout Ashes of Creation. The world you see reflected on your server will depend entirely on where players decide to plant their roots, and the events and structures that fill the world will be...
But we just discussed that. There can be some unintentional planting of roots. You know, if you don't know where the zone of influences are when you initially start out, you may end up developing a node unintentionally, which locks out the other nodes around it. And apparently each node has its own individual content story arcs. So it could just be by happenstance that a city pops up somewhere instead of intention, which is another thing that I find very interesting.
Direct result of where and...
That also means that, we've said it before, but that also means every single server is going to be different, which is also an interesting concept.
When nodes evolve. Even we aren't sure where players will take things, which makes this project exceptionally exciting for all of us.
I agree.
We focused here on the growth of nodes in order to show how the base functionality works, but in upcoming videos we'll delve into the sieging and possible destruction of nodes, how player-run governments of nodes work, and how regions grow. I hope you enjoyed part 1, and if you'd like to get involved in our development, you can register on our website at ashesofcreation.com or follow us on YouTube and join our community Discord. Thanks for watching part 1 in our series on nodes.
So obviously we're going to go to part 2, right? And this information has been out for 7 years, but, you know, I didn't find it until as of recent, within the past 6 months. So, you know, even though they've been working on this game for a while, it's been like creeping in the background, and it's all going to come to a head here in 2 weeks when we actually get a real in-game look that's not just put on by the producers. So yeah, it's an interesting concept. It gets way more in depth than this, but this is the foundation for every other system and mechanic in the game. And the next video is going to showcase that a little bit. This is just touching what node systems are. Um, it's very intricate. So we're going to pop into part 2 of this, and we'll take it from there.
Hey everyone, this is Stephen Sharif, Creative Director here at Intrepid Studios. Welcome to part 2 of our Node series. If you haven't already, I'd recommend you take a look at part 1 in our 4-part video series on nodes. It's a great introduction to the system's overall purpose and design. The Metropolis, the pinnacle of civilization. A symbol of the power and ingenuity of the people, it is wilderness conquered, mastered, and remade in your own image. The Metropolis is effectively the culmination of the node system. It's the biggest thing that players can bring into being, and the final level of civilization's development on this forgotten world. The Metropolis requires a large amount of resources to develop and maintain, and because of how nodes relate to one another, there can be no more than 5 in existence at a time. So you might naturally ask, what does it do? To answer that question, we need to know what civilization offers in general. Every stage of a node's development comes with additional services and benefits, and these services really start to pick up at stage 3, the village stage. One of the foremost services that a node offers is housing, and through that, citizenship. And citizenship is a big deal. There are 3 primary means of acquiring housing. The first is our in-node housing. It's here that players can begin buying static housing.
I wonder if he's going to explain why citizenship is a big deal. I don't think I've seen a video on that, but apparently it's important. And player housing, we've seen this in other games, but it's very unique in this game, as we're about to find out.
These buildings belong to the node, and as a node levels up, the housing levels up with it. A player will be able to purchase a small one-room house at the village stage. When the node advances up to a town, so does that house. The owner enjoys the benefits of a suddenly larger home. His property size increases, his house is located more towards the center of town, and the square footage of his home has gone up considerably. There's new property available at the town stage, but this new property is more akin to what was available at the previous stage, small and modest. Now when the node advances up further, this time to a metropolis, this all happens again. The player's house, already sizable, grows into a mansion. The number of mansions in a metropolis will be the same number of small homes that were available in this metropolis's village stage.
So I think he's going to get into this, but that means the sooner you get a house in a node's development, the better, because it just, as the node levels up, it upgrades your house for you. You don't have to pay for any changes.
Only those houses that existed at the village level will ever become these main street mansions.
Yeah.
So effectively, at each stage the node advances, you will see the existing homes advance as well. This makes getting in early for a node pretty important, and introduces a real estate aspect to owning in-node property. I know what you're thinking, and the answer is yes, you can sell these properties. These in-node housing options are at a premium, and we expect these to be hotly contested. But if you want to be a citizen, and there are no more in-node housing spots available, you do have some options. For instance, at the town stage and above, your node's politicians will have the option to open up instanced apartments. These are internal-only spaces which can be decorated to your desire. Different price points will offer different sized apartments, and apartment rentals will also offer citizenship.
So he says internal only. Does that mean it's like instanced housing? Or does that mean you can only do stuff inside the building? I'm not sure what that means. I'll dig into that more later.
They won't have external spaces to build out, and they aren't quite as prestigious as in-node housing, but they'll still offer some housing functionality to those who really want to be a citizen of a specific node. The final type of housing available are our free homes. These plots of property can be built anywhere within a node's zone of influence, and only after a node reaches stage 3. These are sizable plots of land that all sorts of structures can be built on. Inns and taverns, forges, smelters, lumber yards, mills, stables, are all things that you might find on a freehold. These plots of land are where a player can really get creative with their buildings. Because they're built within a node's zone of influence, they grant citizenship as well. The larger the node, the bigger the zone of influence is, which means more freeholds can be built. As you may know, nodes have 4 different types: scientific, economic, militaristic, and divine. These types unlock different buildings at each level of a node's progression, contributing progressively larger benefits at each stage of a node's development. At the metropolis stage, these benefits are so wide-reaching that a scientific metropolis will feel very different from an economic metropolis, and a divine metropolis very different from a militaristic one. Not only will these cities feel different, but the regions these giant cities belong to will feel different as well. Different types of metropolises will have specific ultimate bonuses. For example, a scientific metropolis will offer fast travel to nodes within its zone of influence. This is big because there is very little fast travel in the game. A world with even just one scientific metropolis will feel and act much differently than a world without it. Similarly, an economic metropolis brings world...
So I do know that there are mounts in the game. I did not know they were forms of fast travel. If that's the case, and it's specific to scientific nodes, then he's right, that's huge, that's game-changing. I think that could be a great benefit to, that node and its zone of influence.
Changing functionality to the table. Normally markets are local, and players can buy from and sell to only players who are in the same node. Economic metropolises break that convention, and they have the capability to build a market that integrates with all the nodes in their zone of influence, providing for a far larger market than any other metropolis could hope for. Divine and militaristic nodes also break world convention in one way or another. In other words, everything changes once a node reaches the metropolis stage. Along with those benefits, node type also determines the type of government that a node has. The most traditional government comes from the scientific node, which allows the citizens to come together and choose their leaders. The divine type allocates its leaders through service-oriented quests that directly help others and their node, quests that prove their faith and dedication to the node. Economic type governments are run by an elite oligarchy. These positions can be bought and sold, so if you want to rule an economic type node, make sure your coin purse is heavier than your competition. Finally, the militaristic type is ruled by combat. Whoever are the last ones standing have proven their worth to lead by iron fist and sharpened blade.
That's interesting. So that's like a war chief. Yeah, so the commerce node and the militaristic node have very unconventional ways of choosing a leader. That's interesting.
These warriors can only be removed from office by citizens who are better and more bloodthirsty than they. Once a leader is chosen, they have a lot to do. Outside the basic services that a node provides, leaders must choose what other service buildings to construct, which means they should have a clear plan for what they want to accomplish during their tenure. Some buildings might simply provide a zone-wide bonus to their citizens. Others might provide expanded markets. Some may increase a node's ability to defend against a siege. There is only so much space for these kinds of buildings, so the leadership will need to choose well in order to keep their citizens happy. Along that same line, leaders will need to tax their populations to provide these services, to construct these buildings, and to keep node atrophy at bay. Too much and their populations will abandon them. Too little and the node will decay and delevel. Savvy leaders can supplement their node's income with trade routes and trade agreements with other nodes. Be sure to provide some armed escorts for those caravans. Absentee leaders need not apply, as every leader can be replaced in the next election cycle.
Well, that's only if you're in a scientific node. But that's interesting. That's not exactly like, but very similar to real-life government structures and taxation. Yeah, that makes the game feel very real if those systems work the way he's describing.
Citizens and only citizens reap the reward of the metropolis, gaining the benefits that their taxes pay for. Additionally, citizens can gain titles according to their position within society. Most of these are reserved for those who have been with the metropolis longest, but latecomers can earn their way to the top with enough effort and guile. Only citizens can participate in government and the different election processes. If their leaders have built marketplaces, citizens can set up shop there by purchasing time.
Okay, so that answers the question I had earlier, like what are the benefits of citizenship?
From the city and paying taxes on the goods they've sold. In Ashes of Creation, what is built can be destroyed, and metropolises are no different. But we feel that the effort to destroy something must be equitable with the effort to build something. Because of this, the higher level a node is, the more difficult and challenging the task of initiating a siege becomes. That means that sieging a metropolis will be an act of epic and world-shattering proportions. The success or failure of that siege will be written into the history books and likely impact every person on that server. Should it succeed, the metropolis will be deleveled or even destroyed, erasing the global benefits that it once provided, while at the same time opening up the opportunity for another node to take its place. Maybe one of a different type, maybe one led by a tyrant, or maybe none at all. Should that siege fail, that means that the hopes and dreams of the attackers, who should be legion in number, have been thwarted, and the status quo will endure. As I said in the beginning, metropolises are the pinnacle of civilization. They represent this through their size, through their systems, and through their citizens. Their weight is felt across the world, and once one is established, everything will change. For the better, or for the worse? Well, that's up to you. I hope you have enjoyed this overview of the metropolis. We have so much to share with you about Ashes during our development. Everyone here at Intrepid Studios is so appreciative of the support that you all have shown us, and it means so much to have you with us along the way. Please subscribe to our social media outlets and make sure to register on our website for updates. Our Kickstarter begins May 1st. We look forward to building Ashes of Creation into the MMORPG that we can all be proud of.
Alright, well, there you have it, guys. So, let's see what my final thoughts are here. Well, initially, right out the gate, I don't see why anybody would want to siege a major node at the beginning of a server. I do see how later on down the road, a server or a node being at max level next to another node that's trying to advance can cause conflict and siege warfare. I can see that. Or if the local population is not happy with which type of node got advanced to the highest level first in a specific region. And that makes perfect sense. And what I found interesting is that you have to be a citizen of a node for a significant period of time to actually get the benefits of citizenship. That gives me pause or worry. That makes me worry that players are going to spend a significant amount of time in one area trying to advance their node and miss out on the rest of the world. But that's yet to be seen. You know, I'm sure there's still activities that they want to do outside their own node. But that kind of, if you want to be a citizen of a node, that kind of locks you down to a finite geographic location. But other than that, you know, this game is based entirely off this node system and a couple other mechanics that build on top of the node system, and it's a core concept that I think is, one, unique, and two, I think it really gives rise to strife and meaningful reasons to do player versus player combat and siege warfare. Besides just, oh, I want the latest PvP gear. It actually causes friction on purpose. And that's an interesting concept, and I'm looking forward to it. So please let me know down in the comments, guys, what you think about this system, what you think is good, and what you think the potential pitfalls are. Next video, I think we're going to get into how politics work and how node siege warfare works, and what these caravans are. I think that's where we're headed next. Alright, don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content, guys, and I'll see you on the next one.